College football week 4, we got to talk about this, guys. Let's do this. So Florida State, we knew had to go into Clemson, and there's a lot of questions if Florida State's team is real or not. I questioned the same thing. Last year, this is definitely not the team that we had seen. And this time around, it almost seems like it's too good to be true at times. You know, they definitely handedly beat LSU, but then they struggled against Boston College, and we also seen them struggle against Clemson. But they do get the W, they get the win. They definitely needed this Clemson game for some validation. But we still don't know how good this Florida State team is. And it's really kind of sad to really kind of have to say that, because they look legitimate. It looks like they should be a team that we should be able to believe that are actually good. But for some odd reason, people are still questioning the legitimacy of Florida State. Now, with the rest of their schedule, for some odd reason, they do have 3 games, I think, that are left to kind of determine if this team is going to be legitimately in the conversation or not as the top 4 teams, because remember, this year it is 14 playoff. But they have Duke that is left, and Duke, of course, beat Clemson, so these 2 teams have a similar win over Clemson. Miami and Florida, which should be interesting as the last game of the season, because Florida could come into that game just to ruin Florida State's season. So this game is always dangerous when you have that battle of Florida between Florida State and Florida. So we really got to see if Florida State can clean up the schedule, make sure to beat Duke, Miami, and Florida. I know what everybody is thinking. Clemson is not the same. We understand that. They don't have the same receiver core that can threaten defenses down the field, get vertical on these guys or anything like that at the moment. And so maybe Clemson is not the best measure of if Florida State is actually legitimate right now or not. Maybe we're actually looking at the wrong picture, because from what we've seen so far, we know Florida State can win. But have they had the competition to tell us that they can win in the bigger picture? Just another reason why I really can't stand the 14 playoff structure. A team that is now on the radar for everybody to watch out for. You know, they beat Wisconsin, which was a big win. And now everyone is kind of giving them attention. From Washington State, you know, Cameron Ward. This guy is definitely a first-round pick quarterback if he decides to come out this year. And this win over Oregon State was a great win for them. You beat DJ Uiagalelei, you know, in a close game. However, you win. You're putting up positive stats. The whole country is talking about you. NFL scouts are coming to watch your game. Cameron Ward is definitely a quarterback to watch out for. You know, NIL really has changed a lot. It really has. It brought more parity to the game. But have you guys noticed lately how good Washington and Washington State has been? We'll talk about Washington here in a little bit, but Washington State is sneakily good. Like, they're a very sneaky team right now, because everyone is not really giving them the attention that I think they deserve. So they're coming out and winning these games and could go on to win many more games in the Pac-12. And I think they will surprise quite a few people. So the big games to note, they got Wisconsin. You know, they handedly beat Colorado State, which even Colorado struggled with. They have UCLA next. Arizona, then they play Oregon, who just beat Colorado pretty bad. And then they eventually have to play Colorado on November 17th. And then guess what their last game is? Away at Washington. Well, like I kept saying, one of the teams that no one wants to play. So I think we really have a lineup here for a shootout to happen in the end between Washington and Washington State. Can you imagine 2 teams that can score as well as they do? You have Penix Jr. and Cameron Ward going at it. Oh, this is lining up to probably be the game of the year if it goes out the way that it definitely should. So I actually cannot wait to see what ends up happening in this one. But let's move on to some other games here. So we got Penn State routes Iowa. Pretty good beat down there. LSU had to survive against Kansas. Once again, we don't really know what LSU is, and the biggest blemish on their schedule is a loss to FSU, which is undefeated. Bama, however, we still have these question marks. And I said it last week also. I knew Joe Milroe would definitely be the starter. I'm not exactly sure if he's their first choice, but out of this group of quarterbacks, he definitely is the first choice. So Bama had to survive Ole Miss at home. And then we're going to get on to one of the games that I know most of the people watched in the afternoon before the Ohio State game. Of course, it was Colorado versus Oregon. So a lot of things to actually mention about this game. But we're just going to break it down and kind of focus on the fundamentals and really the simple things about the game. Last week in my video, I mentioned everybody's going to have their eye on this game for a lot of reasons. And I really had a really big fear about there being a lot of distractions at Colorado. Travis Hunter is not going to be in the depth chart for the next few weeks. And just a lot of distractions with Shedeur when he purchased, for example, the Rolls-Royce Cullinan, and Tom Brady was telling him to focus on football. Or even now, if you have a watch on, I don't have my watch on currently, but if you have a watch on, you can flash it and say, this is the Shedeur, like that's a new thing.
We call this the Shedeur way. Say, throw up your Shedeur way, win with us.
Showing off your watch, the Shedeur, which, I understand. The kid has a lot of hype around him, but he always proves his point. He shows what he can do on the field. No one can blame him on that. Full respect to Shedeur. And I'm glad he's got all this attention around him because truly he deserves it. Seriously. He's earned it, So, a couple things to mention about this game here. Oregon just had to come out and start fast. And that's exactly what they did. On defense, they only needed to do two things truly. Was a cover 2 defense and every now and then drop 8 people back in coverage, which is exactly what they did, But that did not stop Shedeur Sanders from having a great game. Stats-wise, of course, is where I'm talking from in this point. But in all honesty, a lot of people want to blame this game on Colorado's players, and I'm not one of those people. I honestly think this game has to do with coaching. And I said the same thing in my previous video. Colorado's coaches are not adjusting to the game on the fly. They have a game plan and they're sticking to it like a Rottweiler almost, where sometimes you do have to make adjustments during the game where you're just going to lose a game like this, especially against a team like Oregon. So, they're not adjusting during the game. Nor are they putting the team in the best position to win against a top-tier program like Oregon. And sadly, you have USC coming up next, which is not going to be an easy task. But I think, once again, there are just too many distractions for the team right now. And anybody can argue if Travis Hunter is the best college football player in America or not. Is he the best receiver? No, that's Marvin Harrison Jr. We know that. And Emeka Egbuka is not far behind him, of course, but there are many other receivers in college football that are there. Is Travis Hunter the best dual threat, meaning he can play corner and receiver? Of course. He's the only one doing it, and he's great at it. Could he be the best college football player overall in college football? Once again, that's up for debate. I guess that depends on who's watching, because I would say, as of right now, as good as Caleb Williams is, I have to just say him and Shedeur are tied for number 1, who's the best quarterback, with Michael Penix and Cameron Ward coming right behind them. And don't forget about Payne or anything like that. But, who's the best college football player? I guess it depends on who you're asking. On a different day, the answer might be different for everybody. But once again, I think they really have to mitigate the problems of all the distractions. And until that's mitigated, I don't know if we're going to see them win many big games this year. Now, this could definitely change next year, don't get me wrong. But for this year, after the way they showed up to this Oregon game, and then you got USC coming up right after, what adjustments are the coaches willing to make that they haven't made already? And will they even make any adjustments, or will they just stick strictly to the game plan? That's going to be a really big thing to watch. And also, on the both offense and defensive side for Colorado, they're beating themselves with all these penalties, and there's too many penalties going on. And that's something that they definitely got to clean up. So we're going to shift gears over to, it wasn't considered the game of the day, but in all honesty, it's probably the game of the season right now. That was Ohio State versus Notre Dame. Buckeyes coming into the Fighting Irish territory. Watching this game reminds me that this is what I want to consider top-tier college football. Purely defensive, close, nail-biting game. Comes down to the wire. And in all honesty, this game came down to who made the biggest mistake and when did you make that mistake. Ohio State made some defensive mistakes that allowed Notre Dame, of course, to go up 14-10 in the fourth quarter, and they had to come back and win the game. But Notre Dame made the final mistake that literally cost them the game. Ohio State, on that 3rd and goal, Notre Dame only has 10 defensive players on the field, and none of them are lined up on the left side of that offensive line. So mistake number 1, you only had 10 players on the field. You got to get that extra body in there. There's no reason why that was missed, but I also understand why that was missed at the same time. Everybody's in the moment, adrenaline is pumping. Yeah, that's when these mistakes start coming in. But that's where these coaches are paid these millions of dollars to kind of figure out on the spot, like that's their job. And that was really a big miss. Only 10 players, 10 defenders on the field. They were all lined up on the right side of the offensive line. Nobody was on the left side. So when they snapped the ball, running back runs through the line. He ran through the line because nobody was there. And that's a big mistake on Notre Dame's end. And that's what cost them the game. And it was such a beautiful game. This game will always remain as a classic. I think everybody who watched this game loved it. And I got to get the numbers for the viewership. I bet it was one of the highest watched games of the day, if not of the season so far. But there are a couple things that we still have learned. Ohio State's offensive line is still a problem. They still have not fixed it. Their offensive line is just bad. Okay, there's no other way to really put it. They're bad. They definitely need some work on that end. But the pressure that the media has on the Buckeyes, if anyone watched that game until the end and you see Ryan Day going crazy talking about Lou Holtz, can't believe you said this about the Buckeyes, can't believe you said this about this. These guys have had, one bad quarter in 4 years, or however he said it. The video is definitely out there, anyone can watch it. But basically, the way Coach Day was reacting is once again proof that the expectations on the Buckeyes is simply too high by the fans, by the media and everything. You guys have to remember, these guys are still human. They live just like us. They may be able to play football at especially high level in college, but at the end of the day, they're all human. The pressure will come down on them at some point. And I'm glad they were able to get the W, but man, Notre Dame made a big mistake at that point. And I understand you don't want to use that last timeout because that gives Ohio State time to think about it, but you stuffed them at the one. So, when they watch tape back on that, they're definitely going to harp on that. And coaches really got to come back and just say, hey, we can't make a mistake like that again. But congratulations to Ohio State. The Buckeyes win, and we move forward from that, okay? So we'll move on. Next thing up, the team nobody wants to play, the Washington Huskies. Let me tell you, man, I know I was talking about Washington State earlier, but even the better team in that Washington State is definitely Washington. Man, these guys can score. Michael Penix Jr. is a problem for anybody. That guy will definitely be playing a lot of Sundays. I see a lot of CJ Stroud type of play in him, actually. He can play freely. He doesn't make too many mistakes. When he makes a decision, he sticks to it, puts his players in the best position to actually catch the ball and all of that. So, it's actually quite impressive to see him play the way that he does. And I love seeing it. So, this is something that we definitely want to see more of in college football, as players like him rising to the top. And he is. And if he keeps playing like this for the rest of the season, and he is part of that Heisman Award race, I won't say I told you so, but I would not be shocked. I actually expect to see that very soon. So I'm very excited to see how he turns out, man. That's going to be very nice to see. I can't wait to see that. So I'm going to ask you guys a question, and I definitely want to see the answers in the comments. And by the way, like and subscribe to the video. This definitely helps us out a lot. But who's the best team in college football right now? I'm actually really curious to know what people think. Usually at this point of the season, week 4 going into week 5, we know who the best team in college football is. Right now, we really don't. I can't really sit here and say Georgia's the best team in college football right now. Everybody's going to give them that respect because they won the last 2 national championships. Does not necessarily mean they are the best team in college football, however. Every week this year, I'm thankful for more parity in college football, but how many teams each week are stepping up to the plate to say, hey, we belong here? And we have to remember this year's playoffs is only 4 teams. So if the season ended right now, how do you decide really who's in the playoffs? There are way too many good teams, and there's far more than 4, let alone 8 or even 12. A lot of teams are really capable of being in the conversation right now, especially across the top 10. And I can't wait to see how the movement of all the rankings definitely move around in college football this coming week. So we'll definitely have to make a video to go over that as well. But who is the best college football team? Let me know in the comments, and remember guys, please like and subscribe, and we have plenty more content coming very soon. Thank you very much. Peace out, fellas.